Hello, Serie A fans, and welcome to another episode of the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. My name is Daniele, and I am joined by football analyst Steve Coleman. What's going on, Steve?
Yeah, morning. How you going?
Pretty good, and happy to welcome again on the show professional center back for North Carolina FC, Alex Comzia. How you doing, Alex?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back.
And we also have the pleasure to be joined by EPL podcast host Chris Mumford. How are you, Chris?
Fabuloso. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Since the last time we talked last Tuesday, there have been 62 goals in 17 Serie A games. So this past week, if you tuned in on any game, on average, you would have seen 3.6 goals per game. It's funny because Serie A is supposed to be the most defensive league in Europe. And I remember reading about Cristiano Ronaldo telling Romelu Lukaku that Serie A is the hardest place to score in the world. So, Alex, why do you think that we are seeing all these goals in Serie A right now?
Right, Daniele, what's going on with our Italian defenders here, right? But I don't know. Maybe it's a lack of reps, a lack of, getting those high-quality reps in, because training cannot replicate the same as a match. And these past 3 months, they've been doing all the training they can, these defenders. But, I don't necessarily think that, it's been at the highest level of pressure. Maybe there's something to be said also, the fact that there's no fans, the fact that they don't feel that pressure or that energy from the fan base. A lot of players have said that at that level, it's massive for concentration and motivation and energy, just general energy. And I don't know, maybe some of the goalkeeping as well has been suspect. Chris, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's really interesting because I think the other leagues, Bundesliga and EPL, they've actually been the first weeks have been weeks of the defense. And just really striking that in Serie A, they're bucking the trend. Which is a whole lot of fun because, quite honestly, watching 0-0, 1-1 games, as much as I love the tactical, it is nice to see some balls being put in the net. So hard to say about that. Keepers have been pretty uneven, quite candidly, I think, in Serie A. And I look forward to chatting more about that in a bit.
Just admit, Chris, that you just like Serie A more than Premier League.
Something I'm falling in love quickly, even more in Serie A. So
what about some of the goals though? We can talk all we want about defensive frailties, but some of the goals have been incredible, haven't they?
Great point.
Oh yeah, some screamers for sure. I can just mention Luis Muriel's brace this past weekend against Udinese.
Savic in the Atalanta-Lazio game too,
Dybala's curler against Lecce, or Malinowski's bomb against Lazio in the same game that you mentioned, Alex. But yeah, let's take a look at what happened over this past week, and let's begin with Saturday's game between Lazio and Fiorentina. Steve, why don't you unpack that game for us?
Yeah, sure. A game that had lots for everyone, to be honest. I'm sure we're going to get some opinions on VAR some point in this one. But from a tactical point of view, it's a really fascinating encounter between two teams who played with a 3-5-2 system. Fiorentina had a variation where they play with two number 10s with a box in midfield with Ribéry and Garzel as the two 10s. And they look to try and overload that space around Parolo as Lazio's number 6. Lazio continued obviously with Immobile at the top. So they played Johnny and Lazari as their wing backs, and Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic, obviously keys to them in midfield as well. So tactically, I guess the interesting story of the game was the use of both teams' wing backs and how they use them to create a platform for each other's attacks. So Lazio, for example, started with their wing-backs high and wide, trying to get them as high at the pitch as they possibly can, try and force Fiorentina back. Obviously, as we've discussed before, the space in front and behind the wing-back in this system is the potential weakness or strength of the side. So they struggled early to try and break Fiorentina down with that box in midfield. Fiorentina outnumbered them, and I don't know if you remember, there was the early chance on the counter where they played into midfield. It was recovered and they played straight into Ribéry to counter. And those type of moments were a feature of the early exchange between the two teams. The lack of connection between the back three and the wing backs caused Lazio a real issue in the first period of play, probably the first 20 minutes or so. From Fiorentina's perspective, they started much lower with their wing backs, much flatter off, and they used them as a platform to invite the pressure from Lazio. They knew they were going to press hard the pitch, and that was geared around creating space for their two number 10s, Ribéry and Gazel, to get on the ball in that central area. So as effective, especially when the wing-backs were able to get past their opposite numbers and drive into space and force Lazio players to make a decision whether they had to defend or whether they should drop off. So Ribéry's goal, I know you guys have got some thoughts around that, but it's a classic example of that. Wing-back receiving lower on the pitch, forcing Lazio's wing-back out, driving past the pressure, playing quickly into midfield, and then the ball in the channel where the centre-back pressing has come from. And then obviously you end up with a fantastic finish, inside the box. But the recovery runs of the back three and the wing backs allowed Ribéry to cut inside and finish. I don't know if you guys have got any thoughts on that goal.
I have some very strong thoughts about that goal. Alex, why don't you go first? Maybe it'll dampen my temper.
Steve teed it up pretty well there. Yeah, identical formations, and in the first half especially, the key was right out wide with the three in the back and the wing backs, and I thought Ribéry exposed that very well on the first goal. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Monsieur Franck Ribéry. Like he is an absolute legend, amazing dribbler.
37 years old,
still doing it.
Oh yes, sir.
Still doing it. Probably could still maybe play for France, but anyways, that's a story. So if you look at the first goal, the two defenders against him are in a good position initially to take the ball away from him, for at least, I don't know, Pjanić or Parolo, one of them to step a little bit closer to him and the other one to just shift and cover the space behind. But what ends up happening is they both go pretty much square to him, so he can do this sort of Iniesta shift and get through both of them, which is horrendous defending. They both bite at the same time, which allows him to have that space right immediately in behind them. So he does that successfully. Amazing skill. Again, don't want to take anything away from Monsieur Franck. But then Acerbi, we talked about Acerbi last time. I think he's a little too deep, in my opinion. I think he should be a little higher. Franck does a simple, fake shot. Acerbi turns his back, which is defending 101. You cannot turn your back when someone does a fake shot or a fake cross. That is a no-no. And then obviously it makes a fantastic finish.
And I would say that Thomas Strakosha, Lazio's keeper, was not guilty on that occasion. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is it almost felt more like a Sunday street match where he splits the defenders, comes across the center back, Acerbi, who's the real deal, makes that huge no-no. You do not show your rear end to a striker, right? You don't. And I really felt that Strakosha did not have much of a sight line as a result of that. And the fact that Ribéry, instead of going to the far post, ends up slashing it across inside the near post, I just got the sense that Strakosha just didn't have the reaction time to do anything. He stuck in between the sticks in that low angle. I'll give you an example. A keeper that didn't do that, Dean Henderson, got scored on the last minute from Arsenal, where he rushed out there and he paid the price. So I feel that Strakosha did exactly what he was supposed to do. He was let down by his defenders. And quite honestly, I'd pick the ball up out of the net and I'd walk right over to Acerbi, push the ball into his chest and say, "That's on you. You're not invited until my next birthday party until you get 3 good blocks," right? Because you got to call the person out when they make a mistake like that. That is a U14 mistake, and it's just unforgivable. But hey, I get it. It's fast. Everybody's tired and all that stuff. But that's just hard to see at the Serie A level, in my opinion.
But Lazio was able to come back from the 1 goal deficit. How did that play out, Steve?
Yeah, so I thought the goal was actually a little bit against the run of play, to be fair. That they'd started to make some changes in the way they were using the ball and how they used their wing backs and the back three. So they'd already started to cause Fiorentina a few problems. So obviously, if you play with a box in midfield, you play with 2 10s and 2 number 6s, your priority is obviously to dominate the midfield with the ball, but without the ball, you're obviously trying to protect the central areas and force the ball into a wide area. Now, Fiorentina are obviously trying to protect Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic in that midfield. So in the first instance, like I spoke about earlier, with Lazio trying to play very narrow into those two, they were able to protect it and nick the ball a few times and counter. But when Lazio split their centre-backs a little bit wider, and Bastos, especially on the left-hand side here, was really key for this. He operated almost like a second wing-back down the left-hand side. And when you play with one at the top and you have 3 at the back, obviously you have a double overload there, so you can obviously release one more into the next line. So Bastos a little bit higher and wider now gave Ribéry and Gazal a real issue. You know, do you protect the centre back as he drives beyond the box and goes around the outside to create a double up, or do you still try and deal with that and leave the central space open? So they kind of hedged their bets a little bit until half time, where Luis Alberto dropped a lot deeper to try and get on the ball, for example, and started to dictate the tempo a little bit more. But this flattening off of the midfield 4 and the box was a real impact in Luis Alberto, especially his dominance in the game. Obviously, if you stay narrow and you allow Bastos to go around the outside, then Lazio's left wing back Johnny was able to cut inside and create an extra man in the top line, and that caused a real issue for them as well in that moment. So the flexibility of Inzaghi and the ability to change it up on the run there was really key to them getting a good fit in the game, and it actually led to not so much the first goal, which obviously we'll talk about the VAR stuff, but the second goal especially was a real prime example of that, where they split the box apart, able to play through the middle of the box into Alberto's feet. He got turned facing forwards and all of a sudden he's attacking with 2 high wing backs and obviously the front 2 in front of him, and obviously he gets lucky with the 1-2 at the end off the defender, but the finish and the moment itself was created by their flexibility to get round the box or flatten it off to be able to go through it. So yeah, really interesting way of doing things from Lazio's perspective.
Yeah, tell me more about the first goal, because yes, I do always side with the strikers, but I also do think that it was a clear PK because Caicedo was able to touch the ball right before Dragowski just crashed into him, right?
Yeah. I mean, he touches it first, but he's on his way down, isn't he? So it's a difficult one.
Don't know if it matters.
Well, is there much contact there? I don't know. It's for me, it's a borderline one. You see him give and you see him don't, but it's certainly in the favour of the team needing the result. That's for sure.
And Ciro Immobile, and another penalty kick goal. That's 11 out of 12 goals from the penalty kick spot. 28 goals in 28 games. Immobile has the second best goal scoring frequency in Europe. He's better only by Robert Lewandowski, and he scores every 85 minutes for Lazio. That's insane.
I think that's awesome, but I got to tell you, that was not a PK.
I'm with you.
When his legs come out from underneath him, from underneath his knees, before it hits the keeper, like 8 inches before, I mean, he had one idea in mind. And look, I buy in. You've got cognitive bias. You're a striker. I've got cognitive bias. I'm a goalkeeper. But I just got to tell you, video don't lie, and it just it's hard to believe. And I got to tell you something. You know, Lazio needs to send a check to the referee retirement community, because
Chris, don't talk about checks.
The only way they're hanging with Juventus.
Chris, don't talk about checks and referees in Italy, because the last time that happened, it didn't go well. It was 2006, and Juventus got into real trouble there.
Also,
Alex, back me up on this one.
Yeah, 100%. It's not a PK, but can we backtrack to the actual play? It's a pretty simple, direct long ball from the left side. And tell me how it's possible that Caicedo can take a touch with his chest and split 3 center backs just like that, and then even get towards the goalkeeper. It's just poor defending. Obviously, amazing touch, but they're all ball watching. And if you look back at it, I think what causes that goal is, I think it's Milinkovic's initial run to run in behind and create that space for Caicedo. And then that occupies the attention of all the center backs. They're like, oh my gosh, is it the ball going to get passed to him? No, it's not. By the time they already look back, the ball's being drilled in and Caicedo's taking it off his chest. It should never happen. You should take a sidestep, put your head in there, or at least when he takes the touch off his chest, block his path. But it should never even get to the VAR decision. But regardless, it's not a PK.
Yeah, it's a bit of a theme, that one. You know, Fiorentina defending a pass that they think is coming as opposed to the pass that actually comes. Like I spoke about earlier with the midfield box. You know, do you defend the wide player? So second half, obviously they took Bastos off and replaced him with Radu, and more of the same on that side. But the box start defending very much so the pass that they think is coming to the wide player, when actually it goes inside. And the same thing there. They track a runner that they think the ball's going to, and it goes to somebody else. It's a key theme for the game, to be honest.
And what about the second goal by Luis Alberto, who is the Serie A leader in assists? But what about that 1-2 with the defender, Steve?
Yeah, amazing. Like as I said earlier, it's a real, you know, if you go back and watch, or you can read my article on it that's just come out on the Football Analysis website. You know, the goal is a prime example of the process we've been through here, where the ball goes in the middle of the box. Alberto gets facing forwards beyond the last line of the midfield, and now Fiorentina got a real problem. He obviously tries to find the main man in front of goal, Immobile. You know, he gets lucky with the bounce off the defender, but you know he's on his own in there because they've broken midfield completely, and you know they get the luck and the bounce that they perhaps deserve in the game. But it's a great finish as well. I think at the near post, hit with real power from not a lot of backlift.
What a classy player, Luis Alberto. Do you think he will Lazio will be able to keep him in for next year?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? He's certainly influential for them, and you'd almost say, even if you just watch yesterday's game, they've built that attack around him. You know, they try and find him with the ball whenever they can. Inzaghi's given him the flexibility to drop in and get on the ball if he needs to. If he feels he can't get the ball, he can push much higher like he did with the second goal. You know, he has the freedom and flexibility to go wherever he likes to dominate the game. And can they keep hold of him? Well, if they win the league, I think that thing becomes a little bit easier. Champions League football obviously makes life a little bit easier to keep him. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether they can or not when somebody bigger comes in.
So let me ask this, Alex. I am convinced that Serie A players are watching a lot of NBA because those fast breaks look just like an NBA move, right? And it's the same sort of NBA defense as far as I'm concerned, namely not very much. To help me unpack what you thought of the defense.
Like a James Harden?
That specific goal? I mean, just in general, yeah. I mean, we've talked about the fact that there have been more goals. That's for sure. You know, maybe some of the reasons we've spoke about that as well. But I mean, that second Lazio goal, like you said, Steve, a 1-2, and the saddest part about that 1-2 is that the left center back and the center back are flat, and it creates the angle for Alberto to just curl it on the ground. So I feel like it's just a lot of defending 101, Chris. Like, it's just back to basics. I don't know. I've never seen this type of, you know, simple errors in Serie A play. They're usually the best in terms of defending and in general. But I don't know. Maybe it's, like I said, just need more reps. You know, need to make these mistakes so that down the line, you know, they can learn from it. But it shouldn't happen. Honestly, it shouldn't happen at the highest level.
Yeah, and it could be just fatigue, flat out fatigue, right? But you know, it would seem like the strikers would get just as fatigued as the defenders. But I will tell you, from a goalkeeper perspective, he was out on the 6-yard line, right? So he cut off the angle. You know, I think his sight lines were obstructed because you could tell he seemed to make the dive a little bit late, and I think you had that little deflection. He kind of probably froze, and to the credit, I mean, it was perfectly slotted just inside your post. And you got to just say, hey, I was at the right place at the right time. I didn't get the sight line. that's kind of life. Let me pick up the ball out of the net and let's reset. Yeah.
So Lazio won the game 2-1, and they're gonna have to win every game, I would say, going forward, including the July 20th game against Juventus. They're currently standing 4 points behind the Bianconeri. But the other Rome-based team, I'm talking about Roma, did not have quite as good of a weekend. They played at San Siro against AC Milan. They lost 2-0. They both have played with a 4-2-3-1 formation. Ibrahimovic was still missing among the rossoneri with a calf injury. So AC Milan played with Rebić on top. Roma on top had Edin Dzeko, who has 14 goals so far in the season, and he also came off of a brace during the midweek game against Sampdoria. The first half was very balanced. There were chances on both sides, but AC Milan was able to gain the upper hand during the second half. Roma looked a little tired. Before we get into the goals, let's talk about what happened in minute 70, because Dzeko was subbed out for Nikola Kalinic. Now, subbing out Dzeko, he was the captain. He scored a brace the previous game. He's such a big presence on top. What do you guys think about that move? I think that it really takes away confidence from the teammates.
My take is he's been playing a lot of games, right? I mean, I just wonder if it's preservation. I mean, we're going to be going through the first week of August, right, for Serie A, and it's just going to come down to how do I make sure my guys are not getting those soft tissue injuries, and maybe he wasn't feeling the mojo. That's what my quick take would be.
Yeah, but I don't think it's coincidence that 5 minutes later, AC Milan was able to score the winning goal. So what happened at the 75th minute? Right back, Davide Zappacosta made a pass back. The pass got intercepted by Rebić, and who showed once again to be a workaholic, really. He picked the ball up, served it to Paquetá on the left side. The ball was delivered, and then Rebić was able to finish it off after a couple of attempts. But on that pass back that got intercepted, Roma's midfielder, Brian Cristante, he had the chance to foul Rebić when the ball was still about 30 yards out from goal. So I'm asking you, Alex, Cristante was not on a yellow card. Would you get mad at him for not fouling Rebić?
Yeah, first of all, I would get mad at Zappacosta for the terrible back pass because clearly Milan was in possession. Roma was in possession. And you open up when you're in possession. There's a lot more space. And then as soon as you lose the ball, you just have to collapse the space. So that's the first thing. It's a terrible pass that shouldn't happen at this level. The next thing is, yes, I would get mad. You should foul there. And the center back should also be stepping because it's Rebić against four players. So there's an art to fouling and there's an art to diving, as I'm sure you as an Italian know a little bit about. But yeah, and in that moment, why not foul? Like you say, he doesn't have a yellow card. Defend the free kick. I think it's at a distance that it's not going to be too much of a threat. If you're in a bad position, if you're not goal side and you're not in the penalty box or right on top of the box, for me, you have to foul. Why would you not foul? Unless maybe you're on a yellow.
Yeah, I think it's just a pure mistake not fouling there.
And for me as a player, I've played against teams that love to foul high up the pitch as soon as they lose the ball, and it is so disruptive. I hate playing against those teams because your midfielders and your wingers and your forwards can't get into their groove of dribbling. As soon as your best dribbler can't start dribbling because as soon as he tries to dribble, he gets yacked down. Mm-hmm. It is very disruptive. And, like I said, there's an art to fouling and teams should probably use it more. In this case, 100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in the 87th minute, Smalling fouled Theo Hernandez in the box. Hakan Çalhanoğlu scored the 2-0 from the spot. So basically this game tore down Roma's chances to make it to the Champions League. They are currently 9 points below fourth place Atalanta. And guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't seem like Atalanta is going to slow down anytime soon. And
not a chance.
The game also allowed AC Milan to take up that 7th place, which means Europa League qualifying stage. They're currently standing 3 points below Napoli and 3 points above Verona. So right now, these are AC Milan goals, like trying to get into the Europa League's qualifying stage. How much has changed from 15 years ago? But let's not get into that. Instead, let's get into some previews. So we have 2 waves of games coming at us. One will be played between Tuesday and Thursday, and one will be played over the weekend. And let's highlight some of the key matchups, beginning with a big relegation battle between Lecce and Sampdoria. What do we got, Steve?
Yeah, this is, for me, the game of the weekend or the game of the week. It's a real 6-pointer, to use a well-travelled little quote there. I think Lecce and Sampa are 2 teams where it's going to be a pretty dull affair if you just want to watch a game of football. But for me, it's a real interesting battle. Lecce, they use a diamond in midfield for most of the season. They're the deepest team according to the passes per defensive action in the league. So you couple that with their own third recoveries, that they're the deepest team in the league, but they also concede the most shots from the shortest distance in the league.
I was going to say they're the deepest team, but they considered 8 goals in the past 2 games.
Yeah. So there's no coincidence that if you concede the most shots from the shortest distance, sooner or later, things are going to unravel for you. They give up the most touches inside the box in the league, and they've conceded 32 goals inside the box to this date, which is a pretty damning statistic. Which, if they could change it, would change the relegation battle quite quickly, because they have the ability to score goals. You know, barring the last couple of games, I think they've scored 34 goals so far this year. So they compete quite handily with the teams around them and above them in terms of the goals scored. But they certainly have their own style. They're the second longest pass length of teams in the league, which tells you what you need to know. So when you put that together with their low completions from deep positions and the volume of longer passes during the game, met a clear connection with direct play, second ball recoveries and shots from distance, then because of those things, it makes them really vulnerable on the counter-attack, and that's a real issue for them. So, you know, when they do have the ball, obviously, if you're going to defend deeper, you have to play longer from deeper, which, if your team trying to get high up the pitch quickly, causes a lot of kind of transitional moments. And despite defending deeper when they don't have the ball, it creates a real issue for them in their transitional moments. So with Sampdoria, they've used 4-4-2 in most of their games, so over half of their games actually, with some little tactical changes. So they've changed into a diamond, for example, in midfield. They've played with a box with the wide midfielders coming inside, with the fullbacks running beyond them. So they're an interesting tactical team. As I spoke last week, they're the most underperforming team in the league, much to my disgust as a secret fan of theirs from way back in the day. But the impressive part of them is they lose over half of their possessions in the opponent third of the pitch. So when you put that together with the lowest block in the league, you're going to see a lot of interesting things from a Sam perspective. But as I spoke about last week, they've scored only 6 goals in the first half of games so far this year. So this meant they've had to play catch up a lot in the second half. So if Samp can go in level at half time, or they can even be in front, heaven forbid they just score a goal in the first half, then I think they win the game. But if Lecce are in front early, then it's probably a draw. But yeah, for me, Samp have got too much for Lecce, but whether that plays out or not is anyone's guess at this stage with this relegation battle.
Do you think we'll be able to see Fabio Quagliarella back on top, or do you think Ranieri will have to count again on Federico Bonazzoli and Manolo Gabbiadini?
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope that he can come back in the side. He's obviously a massive part of their attacking threat, and he was a big miss in the game last week. So yeah, let's hope he can get back in the side. I haven't checked, to be honest, what his status is, but yeah, let's hope he can get back in.
Absolutely. And guys, on Thursday there is supposed to be probably the best game of the week. We're gonna have Atalanta against Napoli. The quality in this game is pretty high. What should we expect, Steve?
It's second biggest game of the week, apart from the relegation battle, depending on what end of the league you're looking at. But yeah, it's again another interesting one. There's goals in this for sure. It's 3-5-2 from Atalanta versus 4-3-3 from Napoli. There's some interest about whether Gomez will play for Atalanta. He's been listed in teams and out of teams so far in the previews, but he's got 14 assists and 6 goals from 27 games, so he's a massive part of the way Atalanta attack. It's actually looking through the info in the preview. Napoli actually are the most incisive team down the left-hand side in all thirds of the league. So they're above average in all positions on the pitch or down that left-hand side. So Mario Rui is massive for them down that side. Clearly focused there. Insigne on that side as well is a really important player for them. So that side of things is really important. Rui likes to get forward, obviously, and create the width. But it's going to be an interesting matchup because Atalanta, for example, on the other side, so their right-hand side in a direct matchup, are miles clear league leading wise in terms of the same categories down the right-hand side. So Toloy, Malinowski and Ilicic down that side have been massive for them in terms of how they build down the right-hand side, how Atalanta use their wing-backs to get high up the pitch and deliver balls into Zapata. So how that battle plays out, I think is going to be real key to the game. But goalkeepers, Chris, how do you see that situation? We spoke last week about the goalkeepers. They'll have a big impact in this game for sure, won't they?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my take is that Atalanta, if they're within 30 yards of the goal, they're going to take a shot, right? I mean, it is a Houston Rockets type of offense where they're going to go all over the place. While he's at Napoli, quite candidly, their offense just doesn't have the numbers. They're just not put. So I suspect that it could be actually fairly quiet if you are the Atalanta defense, unless you've got 2 or 3 breakaways, which is kind of how I would see if Napoli were to upset. It would probably be 1 or 2 or 3 chances, and Atalanta is sufficiently frustrated.
Steve, it's interesting that you said that Napoli is very dangerous on the left side, because looking at Atalanta's game against Lazio, if I were to play against Atalanta, I would say overload that right side because I don't know if you remember the first goal, the own goal by Deron, as well as other attacking plays by Lazio. Atalanta seemed pretty vulnerable on the left side. Maybe Gozens was having a bad day defensively. But I do think that Caillon, with those, if he plays with those runs behind the defensive line, he will be very dangerous. Has he proved this past weekend by scoring a goal with that run?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they, like I've spoken about before, with the 3-5-2, especially if you want to fly your fullbacks or your wing-backs forward, you're gonna have issues defending in the wide areas. So Napoli's use of the wide spaces, as we've spoken about before, when they played Inter, for example, how they overload in those wide areas are going to cause Atalanta some real issues. But from my perspective, Alex, how do they deal with Zapata?
Well, he's a beast, absolutely. Let's break down the goal he scored against Udinese. He spinned around the defender. The ball by Gomez was perfect, just because we were just talking about how not important Gomez is for the team. The ball by Gomez was beautiful, and he took the first touch just on his right, across his body, just enough so that he couldn't finish with his second touch. So I am a fan of his, but at the same time, you have Luis Muriel, who comes in and just scores goals. He's got 15 goals. Ilicic as well has 15. Zapata has 14. So Gasperini can really play around with his strikers the way he wants.
Yeah, Alex, how do you deal with him in the box? I mean, he scored 2 headers, didn't he, last week?
Yeah,
from wide areas.
he's tough. If you get too tight, he can spin you. Obviously, he's a complete striker. He's a complete forward, and against guys that can do a lot of different things. He's good with his left or his right. He's tricky with his movements. Very athletic. I don't have a specific answer. How do you deal with him? It's can you contain him? Maybe get in his face early. Let him know that you're there. And then maybe as he's coming to show for the ball, you act like you're going to step tight on him. And at the last second, maybe you peel off because he might be lost without your presence there. That's what I like to do with guys that are forwards that are much bigger than myself.
What about with the smaller strikers?
I'm not going to tell you that because training tomorrow is going to look a bit differently. But again, bigger forwards, if you're touch tight on them, they love it because they can feel you. They can grab your jersey. They can turn right or left. They can spin you, use your momentum against you, right? So what I like to do is touch, maybe last second, make them feel lost. Oh my gosh, where is he? Where's the defender? And then try to jump in front of them, make the tackle. Smaller guys like Daniele, I just stick on them the whole time.
For the record,
space allowed.
It never works.
Talking of the smaller guys though, like what impact does Mertens have on this game, Danny? What can he bring to the party?
Oh, let's begin by talking about his beautiful chip. He did have a lot of time in that goal that he scored against Spal, but what a classy player. He plays as a 9, obviously false 9 because of his stature. He combines very well with Insigne. I love when those 2 5-5 guys make a link-up plays. I would rather play him over Milik, at least to start with, because it's more unpredictable. But then it depends on how the game goes. If Atalanta is up and Napoli is gonna need to put in crosses, then probably you're gonna want to sub in Milik, who's as a big guy in the box, has a bigger presence, good with his head. But I think that Mertens shows that he's got a lot of quality. So I would start him to just drive crazy the 3 Atalanta center backs.
Yeah, for me, if there's one team right now that can outpass and outgun Atalanta, it's Napoli. I think they're in good form right now, and I think they win this game. It'll be high scoring. It could be 3-2. It could be 8-7. Who knows? But I think it's I think it's a Napoli win from my end.
Wow, that's a big one, Steve. Away?
Yeah. Well, I'm not. But who cares whether it's away or at home now? There's no fans in the stadium. It doesn't matter. But I've not been too bad prediction wise. But I think Napoli win this one.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alex?
I say 2-1. 2-1 Napoli, and that's being humble for Atalanta because they just have that ability to score. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. It's going to be really open, and as a defender, it could be a nightmare, a game that you don't want to play in because you're going to get exposed 1v1. There's going to be moments that are going to be, in the highlights after the game, players are going to come up to you and say, like, look, you did this wrong, you did that wrong in this one individual moment. So I'm really excited.
Fair. And on Saturday, there will be the Turin derby, Juventus against Torino. In the recent seasons, it's always been a close game, no matter what the position of the 2 teams are in the table. I am curious to see if Torino will show up at Juventus Stadium with a 3-4-3 formation, which they have been employing lately, or whether Moreno Longo will opt for a more defensive formation. For sure, Sarri will play a 4-3-3 with Paulo Dybala being very hot on top and Ronaldo, and they will be probably accompanied by one between Federico Bernardeschi or Douglas Costa. Juventus is struggling with injuries in the back, so Giorgio Chiellini and Merih Demiral are out, as well as fullbacks Mattia De Sciglio and Alexandro. So we should expect to see Danilo starting on the left side, but he's a right-footed defender. So if that happens, Torino should really think about exploiting that potential weakness with wingers Simone Edera and Alex Berenguer. There is also the possibility that Blaise Matuidi starts again as the Juventus's left fullback. I'm going to ask you, Alex, what would you prefer? Would you rather have Matuidi, so a left-footed, reliable, hardworking midfielder, on the as a left back or have Danilo, a right back, playing on the left side?
Short answer, I would choose Matuidi in this moment. I like having left-footed players as a left back. I think it opens up the field very well. As a left-footed player, they can take that touch and then fake that they're going to play down the line if it's not on, and then come inside. With Danilo, it would be a little more restricted because he would probably have to cut in with his right and put his head down and dribble. And as a defending team, that's what I want. So if Danilo's playing, I would steer the play, make sure he has the ball. As soon as he has the ball, we pounce and we steer him towards, into a position where he's putting his head down, he's dribbling. Boom, we collapse, take away his outlets. He's not going to play the ball down the line, so the right back can cheat a little bit. Then again, Danilo's a good 1v1 defender, so I don't want to take anything away from him as well. It's not clearly Matuidi, but I think Matuidi for me is the way to go. He's shown that he can play as a left back. For France, he played as a left wing, but it was really kind of a left back at times. So he's good at that role. He can definitely play there, and he's solid defensively. He eats up so much space as well. So I would choose Matuidi for sure.
Very reliable for sure. We'll see what Sarri opts for. Steve, what are some other matchups that we should look out for during this upcoming week?
There's a few you can gloss over pretty quickly, but the other interesting one for me is Udinese-Roma. So Udinese are really struggling right now. They're sinking quickly. I think I read yesterday they haven't won in nine games now, which is bringing them closer and closer to that relegation battle. And teams around them, including Torino, have jumped over them with wins in the past week or so. So this game becomes even more important if there's a winner in the Lecce Samp game. So if Roma win, it's a huge issue for Udinese. Can't see where their goals are coming from, apart from my favourite player, Lasagna, at the top. So they've got the lowest XG per shot right now in the league, just 0.9 per effort, which is a real problem for them. So yeah, if Roma can pick up the pieces from their defeat last week and turn them over again, I think you're going to find Udinese sliding further and further. They're currently 15th, 28 points. They're two off the third relegation slot. But like I say, if Lecce win and people pick up points around them, they can slide very, very quickly into that 4. So that relegation battle has gone from probably 8 to 6 now, with Fiorentina and Torino maybe pulling away a little bit, but they'll need more points. But Udinese, Sampdoria, Genoa, Lecce are fighting for one spot now. It's going to be a real fight to the end, I think. So yeah, keep your eyes on that one for sure.
And you mentioned Kevin Lasagna for Udinese. I think he's a very complete striker, and because he's a left-footed striker, but this past weekend he showed that he can score with his right and with his head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And he's going to need to do a bit more for them to pull away or pick up points. To be honest, he's a man that can score goals for him, but they just need to supply him a lot more.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our section about quizzes. So Steve and I, we both have some quizzes for you guys. Yeah. I'm gonna let Steve kick us off with this.
You want me to go first? Okay.
Yes,
so mine's a little bit based around possession and my desire to see players, especially midfield, play forwards whenever they can. So tell me, who do you think's got the highest pass count on average per game this year?
I'm pretty sure it's Napoli, right?
I would say Napoli.
Yeah, so there's only 2 teams over 500 passes per game in the league. Napoli are top, 538 passes per game on average. Juventus, 527 passes per game. They're the top 2.
Who's the worst?
Don't know. Who do you think the worst is, Chris?
That's out of my payroll. I'm only focused on the defensive third, man.
So, Chris, who's the keeper with the fewest passes in the league?
that one's
who do you think's at the bottom?
Go ahead, Steve.
Who do you think's at the bottom?
I'm going to defer to Daniele on this one. This is
all right. Teams that don't play very well. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the easy choice, like the teams at the bottom of the table. Maybe Spal or I wouldn't say Genoa, I would say, I don't know. You said that Lecce, they tend to sit very deep. Does it mean that they don't pass a lot? What is it?
Okay, so bottom of the table is Brescia,
Okay.
with just 296 passes on average per game.
That's boring.
And 295 by Sandro Tonali, right?
Yeah. So they're the comfortably the bottom of the league in terms of number of passes per game. So Napoli are the highest pass count. The top two sides, them and Juventus, also play the shortest in terms of length, and also provide the highest match tempo. So match tempo is the amount of passes that are played per minute of possession. Those two are comfortably the highest in those three areas. However, when you look a little bit deeper, Napoli play 30% of their passes forwards, Juventus 29%. Now, you'd expect that to be, with the number of passes, you expect theirs to be the highest, but it's not in terms of percentage of forward passes per number of passes per game. So who do you think is the highest percentage of passes forwards in the league?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to think about it a little more, but
I'm going to throw out Sassuolo.
Sassuolo? Okay, interesting.
I'm going to say Hellas Verona then.
I don't know if you can see my screen, but you are 100% correct. So
I am, or Alex is?
No, you are. So
what?
So Verona are the kings.
Wow.
So they have 360 passes per game with 39% forward passes.
Okay.
And of those forward passes, they're at 77% completion of those forward passes.
That's pretty good.
So in terms of pass count in relation to league position, they are comfortably higher up the table.
I'm telling you why I said Hellas Verona. So last week I did the match analysis for Hellas Verona against Napoli, and I really enjoyed how Hellas Verona was linking up with their wing backs and attacking mids, and so I just thought, well, I feel like they do pass a lot forward, and so.
And in their last game, they just played. There's so many games, I'm struggling to remember who they played the last one, but they scored a goal straight into the 9. The 9 opened up, one touch into the wide player, crossed into the box, goal. A classic example of they're direct, but they're creatively direct as opposed to just playing long balls forward. It's really interesting. But just to give you some perspective around the league, so they're 39% forwards. Brescia have the lowest pass count, 296, I said, but 38% of their passes go forwards.
I do think that
their completion levels are much lower. Yeah, their completion levels are down at 70%. So that gives you an indication perhaps of the length of their pass. So their average pass length is just on 20 yards, which is quite high in the league. So that's quite interesting in terms of they play forwards a lot given the number of passes. But Atalanta, 32% forward passes. Milan, 32% forward passes.
Okay. Interesting.
So
does it mean that Brescia doesn't pass a lot and the few passes that they make are long passes?
Yeah, I think you could probably make that assumption without going too deeply into it. Yeah.
All right. My part of the quiz has to do with the recent news of Barcelona trading Arthur for Miralem Pjanić. Obviously, we're talking about Miralem Pjanić, Juventus's holding midfielder. Here's a piece of trivia for you guys. So Pjanić will be the third guy to have played with both Messi and Ronaldo at a club level. Can you guys guess the other two?
Oh, what a question.
Piqué.
Okay, that's the easy one. He played for
only club level, right?
Only club level.
Piqué. Did they play together at Man United?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was there.
Did they? Okay.
That's where he was before he moved to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Who's the other one?
I didn't think they played. Okay.
The other one is tough.
Is it a tough one?
Yep.
I don't know.
Well, he must be. I was going to say he must be Barcelona and.
Hint.
Think
about the 2006 Champions League. that was won by Barcelona. Any guesses?
What about Silvinho?
No.
Oh,
Okay, this guy is a Celtic legend.
Henrik Larsson.
Oh, yes, sir.
Ah,
So he won the 2006 Champions League with Barca, and the following year he moved to Man U, and he won the Premier League with Man U, and that's where he played with Cristiano Ronaldo.
What a question!
Wow,
Pjanić would be the help, Chris.
No, that's again, that's beyond my pay grade. I am interested in talking about strength of schedule, where I could ask you guys who's got the easiest and harder spots on the run in.
Okay.
So you guys have a guess at who's got the easiest run in the next, let's say, 9 or 10 matches coming in.
Whoever is not playing Atalanta.
Are we talking about the top or the bottom?
We're talking about the top this week. We'll get to the bottom next week.
Okay.
Righto. Okay. So easiest run in terms of playing more teams who are placed below them.
I will say let's break the league into 4 quartiles, the top 5, and then 6 through 10, 11 through 15, and then 16 through 20.
Okay.
right. Relegation games could be tough.
Yep.
So
I think it's Inter.
Inter. Okay. Anybody else have a guess?
So I know that we still have to see Juventus against Lazio, so I'm just gonna exclude them. I'm gonna go with hopefully AC Milan.
So let me give you a little insight here. Okay. So just as a reference point, you obviously Juventus is four points ahead of Lazio, which is 4 points ahead of Inter, which is 4 points ahead of Atalanta. Nice and easy to remember, right?
Okay.
Of those 4, believe it or not, Lazio has got the easiest schedule. They do have to play Juve, but keep in mind that Juve's got to play Atalanta, Lazio, and Roma, which is that's going to be 3 legit challenging match. And then, of course, that Titan Milan as well that Juventus has to play.
That other team.
So that, and then believe it or not, Roma have a pretty easy time at it. They do have to play Inter and Juve, but they do have some relative to the 7 or 8 teams that are in the Champions and Europa League. As far as folks that are having the most difficult schedule, anybody want to take some quick guesses at that?
Okay, I currently pulled up the schedule.
He's cheating.
I know he's cheating. You know something? Those strikers, you know they're going to be
strikers. I'm going to kick them tomorrow in training for you guys.
Because, Chris, I was going to say that teams like Torino, Udinese, if they end up having to struggle, to fight, to not relegate, they're going to be very hard teams to play against. Udinese is a very physical team. They have structure. And if they are also motivated to not play in Serie B the following year, they're going to be like one of the hardest teams to play, as shown by this past.
You know, I love that stat. I'm going to give you a stat from the EPL. None of the relegation threatened teams won this week in the last 2 couple games in the EPL. So that's I buy the kind of the old school logic on it, but I just don't know if it reflects reality. And there's a reason why they're at the bottom of the table.
Yeah. So from memory as well, Udinese have got the hardest running of all the teams in that relegation battle. I did a piece a little while back on the relegation battle, and I think they play 7 out of the 10 games against teams above them.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, the folks that have it the most difficult is your favorite, AC Milan. They have to play Lazio, Juventus, Atalanta, not to mention Napoli and Parma. So that's pretty challenging. And then Napoli have a tough go. Atalanta, Roma, Inter, and Lazio, not to mention Milan, your favorite Milan and Parma. So
very hard to play against.
Yeah, so Napoli and Milan have it the toughest. Lazio and Roma have the easiest run in. Now you still got to show up and play the games, but that's the way the schedule is right now.
That's interesting because it will make the title race even more interesting, because Juventus may drop some points, Lazio may close the gap, and I would love to see the title being decided at the last match day. That would be amazing.
And that match you talked about between Lazio and Juventus may really be that is the 6-point game, right? I mean, so it'll be fascinating to see how that comes. And quite honestly, there's not a whole lot of drama going on in the other leagues, right? I mean, you could argue that the Barca Real Madrid has still got some drama in it, but it ain't happening in the EPL, I can tell you that.
My heart's pumping for the Barca situation.
Yeah. So I'll keep you up to date on the strength of schedule as the running continues.
Thanks for that. And well, that's it, guys, for today's Serie A show. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Steve, Alex, and Chris, for your perspective. So last week, we told you all to sit back and enjoy this week full of Serie A games. I don't think there is any need to restate that, given the entertainment that the league has been providing. We will be back next Tuesday with another episode of the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. Ciao.